Well, good day, everybody, and welcome back. Well, I have a Hermes 3000 here. I actually now have 4 Hermes 3000s. I have 2 of these middle body styles, one of the oldest style, one of the boxy later style. Anyway, this was given to me. It's missing a left platen knob, but that's not why you're here. We're going to deal with the fact that this typewriter makes a loud ratcheting sound when you do the carriage return. So this is the escapement silencer problem, or the carriage return silencer issue. So what is the silencer? Well, on typewriters, you can push the carriage to the right for the return direction. When you do that, it shouldn't make a loud ratcheting or grinding noise. If it does, it's because the star wheel of the escapement, there's a loose dog lever, and it's supposed to push out of the way. The loose dog is not supposed to be hit by the teeth of the star wheel as it's going in the return direction. If it is, it'll make this ratcheting sound. So we have to get into the escapement area and look at it. And you might think, oh my gosh, Joe, we're going to go into the escapement. It's remarkably easy to get into the escapement of a Hermes 3000 because we're going to pull the carriage. And yeah, that sounds scary too, doesn't it? But actually, the carriages come off really easy. That's actually the preferred way to get the body panels off, is you pull the carriage first, and that gives you access directly into the escapement. Let's do this. Stay tuned. So the first thing I like to do is take off the ribbon cover, of course, and these kind of just pull forward. Okay, on the back of the machine, I'm going to push the carriage to the left. There is a big slotted screw with this bracket, and there's some engraving on it that says minus and plus. This bracket is on the right side of the machine. It is a left-hand thread, so if you turn it clockwise, the bracket will turn horizontal, just like it did. So this side is right-hand threaded, so you would turn it counterclockwise, and that bracket will turn horizontally. When both of those are turned horizontally, you can pick the carriage right off the machine. When you remove and reinstall the carriage, you want to be careful of the card guides here. Okay, I've just loosened both of these brackets and turned their screws so the brackets are horizontal. And now I'm going to try to kind of center the carriage, and I can just kind of lift it up and off the machine just like that. I'm going to set it aside, and there is the entire escapement, ready to be cleaned and degreased and serviced. This also gives us access to remove the body panels if we need to, now that the carriage is off. Okay, so I'm going to rotate the pinion gear, or the star wheel, in the direction that it would rotate when you're doing a carriage return. And you'll see there is a little wire, which I'm pointing to right here. That's the return silencer spring. It's wrapped around the star wheel shaft in a little groove right here. And there's a looped end right here. And it pushes on this lever you see me pointing to the right of it. And that pushes this dog lever out of the way of the star wheel, so it's free to turn without making the ratcheting sound. And the problem with this machine was this looped end wasn't pushing far enough. It wasn't pushing this arm at all. And so the teeth of the star wheel were ratcheting like that, tink, 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 on this lever. And so what I did is I took my spring hook, I pulled the loop around so it's on the front side of this, and then I was able to reform it slightly, and then I had to push it back around underneath there to get to the back side of this arm. So now the loop is underneath the arm, and it pushes the arm up as it rotates, and it does the silencing operation right here. And also, while you're in here, you want to take a cotton bud and some alcohol and degrease this spring that rides in this thin groove and get as much of the grease and oils off of it as possible. Because you want this spring to kind of grip the star wheel as it turns, and the spring has to kind of rotate with it a little bit in order to do this silencing operation. When you put the carriage back in, you want to make sure that both of these brackets are situated at 90 degrees, like horizontal. The negative direction is the direction we're removing the carriage, so it has to be like that. And if you don't have enough room between the underneath side of this pivoting arm and this plate where the carriage sits, you can turn it additionally in the negative direction, and that will raise this bracket up. Now, the other thing you want to be careful of is when you're putting the carriage back in, there is a set screw on each side, this right here, with a locking nut, and that sets the position of the rack gear of the carriage, how far this way or that way the carriage sits, which effectively controls how much meshing happens between the rack gear and the escapement pinion. Sometimes the clearance is a little tight because these screws, there's one on the other side also, they were adjusted a little bit tight, so you may have to loosen the nut, back the screw off a turn or so, and that'll give you more room for putting the carriage in place. But the right side of the carriage, the bracket has a hole in it that sits down on this little stud right here. And both plates, the left and right side, has to sit flat on this surface so that when you turn these brackets, they will rotate up above and secure the carriage in place on both ends. Okay, so I'm going to attempt to put the carriage back in now. So I'm going to hold the carriage so it's relatively centered. This is one of the surfaces that has to sit down on that plate. This has the hole for the stud to go on it. And here is the other plate that has to sit down on the mounting surface. Both of those brackets are horizontal. This bracket here in the back and this one here are the ones that are pushed by those set screws. So these thin brackets have to fit down between the set screw and that horizontal bracket that you adjust. Harder to explain than to do. And you have to get both sides in. Okay, I'm going to turn this bracket counterclockwise to lock it in place. And the one on the left side of the machine, doesn't feel like it's... Okay, make sure that's situated. Turn it clockwise. Okay. And when I do a carriage return, it's nice and quiet, no grinding. Nice. Well, now that I have the return silencer fixed, I have the carriage rack gear properly meshed to the escapement pinion gear, and it sounds really good. And I'm really happy with the way it came out. So one of the things that's different about the Hermes 3000 compared to other typewriters is most other typewriters, when you press the carriage release button, it rotates the rack gear away from the escapement pinion gear. That's what happens on most typewriters. But on the Hermes 3000, what happens is the rack gear stays engaged to the pinion gear of the escapement. But what it does is by pushing the carriage release button, what you're doing is essentially doing like the tabulator feature. It's just pushing the loose dog bracket out of the way of the star wheel. So you always have the star wheel, the pinion gear engaged to the carriage rack gear on a Hermes 3000, even when you're moving the carriage with the carriage release button. Just keep that in mind. In any event, this was a fun repair. I know a little bit more now about how to dig into these, how to take the carriage off, put them back, how to access the escapement pretty easily for cleaning. It's the easier way to get the body shells off by pulling the carriage first. And then you can clean the escapement really good, get all those eraser crumbs out of it, degrease it, and then make sure that return silencer spring is pushing that little lever far enough so the loose dog clears the teeth of the star wheel when you're going in the return direction like that. Well, this was a fun repair. The Hermes 3000s are kind of different machines in some ways, and a lot of people like them. And how about you? Leave a comment down below if you have a Hermes 3000 and tell me what you think about it. In any event, you guys stay well, stay creative, and have yourselves a great day. And bye-bye for now.